all across America and around the world. This is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio.
Good day. I'm Jim Fausone. I'm the officer of the deck today here on Veterans Radio, and thanks for joining us. We've got two great stories to tell you today. One is on vets to drones. It's a discussion how veterans can get involved in the drone industry, and the second's about rating or scoring veterans charities with a group that does that. We all get solicited. We want our money to really go to veterans and not administrative costs. You'll find that interesting as well, so stick around. We always want to remind you you can find more about Veterans Radio at its Facebook site or at the web, veteransradio.org, where we're on the web 24/7. You can find a lot of our podcasts there as well. We post new ones every Tuesday, so you can get a new story, a new interview, something you didn't know before by going to veteransradio.org. And before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First up, we want to thank National Veteran Business Development Council, nvbdc.org. It was established to certify both service-disabled and veteran-owned businesses. You'll find out how they can help your business by going to nvbdc.org. We want to thank Legal Help for Veterans. Legal Help for Veterans fights for veterans' disability rights all across the nation. You can reach them at 800-693-4800 or on the web at legalhelpforveterans.com. And finally, PuroClean. PuroClean is the paramedics of property damage. It provides water damage remediation, flood water removal, fire and smoke damage remediation, mold removal, biohazard cleanup. It also has a focus on veteran franchisees. You can learn more about them by going to puroclean.com. We just want to remind you that Veterans Radio podcasts are available on all your favorite streaming platforms, including RSS.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Rees Across America Radio. We were recently identified as in the 15th spot, if you will, of the top 100 veteran-centric podcasts by FeedSpot. So we're really pretty proud of being in the top 15. So listen in wherever you're at to veteransradio.org and its podcasts. We want to welcome to Veterans Radio Chris Lewis, a Marine and Army vet. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but he's involved in a really cool effort in getting veterans into the drone industry. Chris, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Thanks, Jim. It's great to be here.
How did a nice kid like you first end up in the Marines for about 8 years, then did a couple of years in the Army, and then moved on? Tell us about it.
Well, I am an Army brat. I was born on Fort Polk, and I asked my mother, who did 23 years in the Army, I asked her, what branch to go into, and she said, whatever you do, don't join the Marine Corps. So naturally, that's where I ended up.
Exactly. So tell us what you did in the Marine Corps.
Did motor transport, and that's kind of where I got my first touch on drones. I was actually deployed to Helmand Province, Afghanistan, and was handed a box and said, hey, you got to use this thing. I said, what's in the box? They said, it's a drone. I was like, well, what's a drone? 20-year-old Lance Corporal, had no idea, but we did figure it out. So ended up flying that during convoy operations. So we did security gun trucks around long logistics convoys across Helmand Province. And through the RQ-11 Raven, and did persistent ISR around the convoys whenever we went firm at night, and began to deploy in the mornings as well.
Well, it's really been an interesting progression to watch how drones have become almost mandatory gear in military life. You just have to watch the nightly news and see what Russia's doing to Ukraine and Ukraine's doing to Russia, and the advances the U.S. is trying to get, and actually even Taiwan, I was reading about, trying to build up a drone arsenal, whether they are in the air or in the water, to counter some of the activities of the Chinese. So drones and drone operation proliferates in the military world. How did you move your military experience with drone operations over into the civilian world?
That's a great question. I think I got really lucky, to be honest. I got out of the military 2018, went to NC State using the GI Bill, was actually given a couple of courses and projects that involved drones, and was going to end up in grad school doing agricultural-based research using drones to do multispectral imagery across North Carolina. But COVID hit, laboratory shut down, ended up with a nice shiny piece of paper, May of 2020, and then found a guy at the park right here in Raleigh. And he said, "Do you want to go to California and start flying robots around and making money doing it?" I said, "Yes."
Where do I sign, right?
Exactly. Less than 48 hours later, we were on the road in a 2002 F-150, camping gear in tow, robots in the back, and we drove to California, where we started doing power line inspections for the wildfire mitigation program out there. That was my first kind of toes getting dipped in the water, if you will. Finished up that contract, went down to Hurricane Dorian in Florida. Same thing, power line inspections down there. Eventually got licensed, became a Part 107 holding drone pilot, if you will. Then went out to the Midwest and started doing telecommunication inspections across the Midwest. And that kind of started my cycle of contracting operations across the country. Naturally started recruiting other veterans into the industry, just like, "Hey, I found something. It's incredible. It fits like a glove. You won't believe it, but come on out here with me." So I started bringing other veterans. My brother is an Air Force veteran, brought him with me on one of the contracts, or several contracts. Some guys I served in the Marine Corps with, folks I met at NC State, some fellow veteran students, and started bringing them out on contracts with me. And then about 2 or 3 years of that, we met up at a bar in San Bernardino, California during one of these contracts with about 40 other veterans and another drone pilot, and says, "Hey, we're going to formalize this kind of initiative of recruiting, and we're going to call it Vets to Drones, and we're going to start this program and start bringing other veterans into the industry."
Well, it's a great a great idea and an advancing industry, right? It's an area where you can see growth just happening probably every month. But for the uninitiated, Chris, talk about the areas that civilian drone operators work. What industries use them these days?
Oh, that's a great question. There's a variety of verticals across the industry, and everywhere you look, there's opportunity. You got to make sure you stay focused into your niche and learn your niche early. So I started in power line inspections. So infrastructure in general is kind of the area of expertise I sunk my teeth into when I first got in. So power line inspections with manual flight, cell tower inspections, doing digital twin recreation, using autonomous orbits around vertical structures. Then I went into construction mapping, and then I kind of started dipping my toes into other areas as well. But the infrastructure inspection side is what we usually push the veterans in our program towards, because there's a lot of employment and 1099 contract opportunities in that area. Now,
this is not just power line infrastructure. It's all types of infrastructure, is it not?
Absolutely. I've done solar farms, cell towers, construction yards, agricultural mapping, spreading and spraying with agricultural drones. And then with the power lines, I mean, if you go outside, you see them far and wide. They're all over the country. So,
yeah, the agricultural application is very interesting, too, because, many folks live in the big cities. But if you drive across this country, almost in every state, you're going to be amazed at the level of agricultural that we have, and how knowing what's going on from an aerial point of view would really be helpful, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, the data and imagery received during an agricultural mapping mission, especially using multispectral imagery, can give you pinpoint accuracy of where the failure points are in a given field. It doesn't matter the size of the acreage. We have a growing partnership with Pix4D, where some of our members are licensed instructors for that software. We teach other veterans how to use that as well. And then we have a new one that's coming up with Agrimo, which is a agricultural-based software company that's designed just for agricultural solutions in the drone space.
I was looking at some materials, and it also seems to me that it's also being widely used in the real estate industry. And I want you to talk a little bit about how it's being used in disaster relief as well.
Absolutely. So on the real estate side, it's been kind of hit or miss depending on, either you are involved in real estate or realtors and they're willing to bring you on as a Part 107 holder. There were some gray areas early on where real estate agents were just buying drones and flying for themselves without getting licensed. And that caused the FAA to start pinpointing people and shelling out some pretty hefty fines. So I don't recommend doing that. Make sure you get licensed. It's a $175 license versus a $12,000 fine. So, but great use case there.
Even a Marine can figure that out and know how that equation works. You didn't have to talk to your brother who was an Air Force vet. He didn't listen to Mom. I should say he did listen to Mom. He didn't join the Marines.
Yeah, it's written in plague and crayon. It's easy to understand. Don't get the $12,000 fine. Go for the $175 certification.
You've mentioned it a couple of times, and I want to focus on this because these aren't your toy hobby drones, line of sight. You're going to crash them every time you fly them. These are professional commercial drones, and as you mentioned, you need a license. Tell us about the Part 107 licensing and your friends at the FAA.
Perfect. So the Part 107 is the minimum certification to earn any type of income when it comes to using drones and operating in the national airspace. It is not that difficult. I tell people if you're okay at land nav, you just add a Z axis to land nav, and now you're in the airspace. If you can, read a map on 2D, you add some third dimension to it, you can figure it out. There's a couple of trick questions. It is a federally proctored test, but it is not that difficult to learn. That is one thing that we provide as well as the Part 107 instruction through our program. But it's the first step into getting into the industry. It is far from enough to be considered a true subject matter expert or professional in this field, but it's a step in the right direction.
As I mentioned, this area is exploding. I think there's some estimates of there's going to be hundreds of thousands of jobs in this field over the next 10 years. Pays pretty good, 50 maybe to 100 grandish, depending on who you're signing on with or if you're running independent contractors. There's some real things that may be of interest to veterans. You're outdoors working. You don't have a boss, hitting the time clock over your shoulder, maybe the same way. Technology, these are all things which sort of veterans will gravitate to, but they have to know what they're doing, and that gets us to vet2drones.org. Tell us what the mission of Vets to Drones is.
Perfect. So we're introducing veterans into the industry. We have 5 core mission sets. Workforce development is first, making sure that the veterans in our program understand how to use these drones in a professional capacity, whether that's manual flight for real estate, video, photography, that kind of thing, or doing the full data capture and processing and even crafting a deliverable for their clients. After that, it's K through 12 education. Several of our members are educators in the K through 12 realm. Others do after school programs, drone building programs. There's even a drone soccer league, both the U.S. drone soccer league and there's a Korean derivative as well, where they're getting kids into STEM education using drone technology because it's very exciting. Consider it like a Quidditch for drones, if you will. Then, of course, natural disaster response, which we can dive into. One of the concepts in the industry is drones for good. And disaster response is one of the number one areas you can use a drone to help people in a variety of ways. Then there's conservation. The first project I came up with for our program was the Veterans in the Forest project. We started down in San Diego, and we did mapping missions for reforestation. And we went all the way up to the Dakotas and across to Pennsylvania and across the entire country doing these mapping missions and then bringing other veterans with us along the way. It turned into a cool camping trip where you learn how to fly drones all across the U.S. In different forested areas. Then our final mission is recreational therapy. We do fly days, drone demo days, if you will. We travel around the country. We get together with a bunch of veterans and just fly. During the day, it's outdoors. Has to be a pretty nice day. It's a sober environment, and you're learning a potentially monetizable skill. So those are our 5 core missions in the Vets to Drones program.
Yeah, and you can find more about Vets to Drones by going to vetstodrones.org. There's a lot of great information there. As you mentioned, this is sort of a nationwide program. Not only have you done projects all over the country with drones and mapping and disaster relief, but I also see that you sort of have a regular online program, a discussion, newsletters. Tell us a little bit about how you engage veterans on a regular basis.
So before, the VA newsletter came out and our numbers have just exploded, right? We've had over 100,000 people reach out in a month, and it's just been really exciting. Before that, we do a weekly webinar. We get online, we talk about the drone industry as a whole, and we talk about problems here, different events that are coming up, job opportunities there, and what's going on in the industry as a whole. So since that insurgence, the influx of veterans coming in, we've broken the country down into 10 different districts. We've began assigning different district or regional commanders, if you will, so we can better control and understand different areas of the country and the needs based on those areas.
Yeah, one of the problems of success is you got to figure out how to deal with it, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, but when I founded this program, it wasn't that veterans need help getting into the industry. It's more that the industry needs help from the veterans that have been doing this type of operation technically the Marine Corps had the first drone program in 1989. We'll take that claim to fame.
There you go.
We've had we have this experience, or these experiences that add into this industry as a whole. And as an American drone industry, we're a little bit behind the curve when it comes to manufacturing and some of the processes that are being implemented across the industry. So I know that the industry as a whole can use our help, and we get the right people, the brightest minds, and the capable veterans into this industry will help out.
Well, it's both the technical aspect of flying these drones, but you mentioned the software and the data analysis, right? Because all you're doing when you're flying is collecting data. Mm-hmm. How does that work? Is the operator involved in the data quality and data manipulation, or does that get handed off to a whole nother segment of the industry?
That is a great question. So there's different levels to your kind of progression into the industry. There's salary-based, W-2 based. There's 1099 freelance work, and then starting your own full-blown business. If you're doing salary-based or W-2, usually you're doing just data collection, and there's a data processing unit at the company that you will upload and pass that data along to. When you get into the 1099 freelance work, you'll start touching the data and maneuvering data a little bit more. If you own your own small business and is your brand out there approaching the clients, you're collecting the data, processing the data, and producing that deliverable for the client. So it's not just one thing or the other.
And do you find that there are veterans going into, hey, now that I've got my experience and sea legs here on this, I'm going to go ahead and start my own business. I want to be my own entrepreneur here in this area. Is that possible? Absolutely.
I see it all the time. Many folks want to start their own drone business, and that's sometimes how they approach us, even before they have their Part 107. But what I recommend is the crawl, walk, run approach. I tell exactly how I did it. So I got into the industry, got paid to learn, used other people's equipment to learn how to maneuver the technology. And then once I built my bank account up enough, started my own small business and was able to pull in different contracts. And then I continuously rotated between W-2 work and 1099 freelance and having my own small business all at the same time to kind of get things scalable.
Yeah, you got to build momentum, build reputation, be able to get new experiences to apply to future experiences when somebody's got an RFP out or asking for, hey, is this something that can be done? I think I cut you off earlier. You mentioned it again. I want to come back to it, and that's the disaster relief aspect of this. It's easy to visualize how this how drones are used for information gathering in the field, in the battlefield. Tell us how it's used in disaster relief.
Perfect. So we've responded to a hurricane every year since 2020, at least one, right? Some tornadoes, stuff like that as well. The first initial use case is search and rescue. You have thermal enabled drones. It is so much easier to get in the air and fly with a thermal enabled drone, especially at nighttime, and identify where people may or may not be stranded or unreachable. Definitely unable to see them with the naked eye, right? So that is first and foremost the most impactful use case. Search and rescue using thermal and night vision enabled drones directly after a disaster. After that would be moving supplies. So these larger drones are able to do deliveries. Some of the agricultural drones can carry over 100 pounds and move supplies to and from areas that may have been cut off. We saw it during Hurricane Ian with Sanibel Island. They were using full-blown Chinooks, right? We didn't have as many delivery drones back then at our disposal, so they were using Chinooks to move things back and forth when the island was cut off. During Hurricane Helene, there were thousands of bridges out. So there was no way for Chinooks to go to every single cutoff area in that mountainous and highly elevated terrain. So drones were it. Using a delivery drone, an agricultural drone that was capable of carrying a heavier capacity was what was the easiest way to get supplies to and from these areas that were cut off. I know we've seen some areas were using like inflatable rafts across a river with a rope. That rope can get cut and go downriver, and all those supplies are gone. But a drone is just going to easily pick up 100 pounds to and from every single time. They're built that way. So.
And we're talking to Chris Lewis, who is the founder and grand poobah of vetstodrones.org. And you're in North Carolina, so being able to use drones as a result of the damage done by Helene in North Carolina had to be really satisfying to be able to help the community, which I think is another thing veterans want to do. We want to serve. This is kind of an interesting way to serve your community, isn't it?
Absolutely. So I'm, born and raised in Louisiana, grew up right outside of New Orleans. I moved to North Carolina, just about 20 years ago now, after Hurricane Katrina. So
you thought you got away from it all, didn't you?
Yeah, you think so? Yeah, now I chase it. So I don't know, but it's it's a passion project of mine, right? And the first year I got in the industry, ended up down responding for Hurricane Dorian in a commercial aspect, right? Doing the power line inspections, and then Hurricane Ian and Ida, same thing, commercial aspect with a little bit of humanitarian sprinkled in, doing cell towers. Capture down there disaster surveys as well. Post Helene, we've been up there since directly after the storm. Since it's in the state, we had a huge support network from fellow veterans across the state. Was sent there by the National Guard Association. The United States Veterans Corps out of Raleigh was a massive support network where we landed on the ground as the scouts, being the drone pilots, right? We're the first ones in. We have the technology. We're able to go and live off the land for weeks at a time. And then the logistics network of veterans just started flooding in. We set up shop right just north of Spruce Pine, North Carolina, which we still have a brick and mortar office today. And then began, once the search and rescue operations ended, we began mapping the area to further assess the effectiveness of the assets that were being deployed by the 18th Airborne Corps, active duty Army on Title 10 action, the North Carolina National Guard, Tennessee National Guard, I believe Kentucky National Guard was down there as well. And then the massive amount of veteran volunteers that showed up at the camp that we had set up just north of Spruce Pine on a fellow veteran's property.
We're using the term drone, which is sort of like saying Kleenex instead of tissue paper, right? There's a zillion different types of configurations and models of drones. In the commercial space, when you're doing these different types of inspections, how big are these drones? How costly are these drones? What capabilities do these drones have? Can you fill us in a little, Chris? Sure.
So some of the smaller UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, will be purely for data collection. You can go into some of the larger ones for agricultural and delivery operations. The data collection drones will cost between $2,000 and $40,000, really, depending on the type of data you're doing and collecting. And if it has an interchangeable sensor payload on there, those sensors can range between $4,000 and $12,000 just for the sensor alone, let alone the drone to fly it. The agricultural drones will range between 20 and 60,000. They're much larger. You need a higher level of licensing per state to be able to spread and spray different chemicals. So you have to get your Part 137 and your pesticide spraying license for each individual state to be able to get into that. Then there's the fixed wing drones that are used for long range, beyond visual line of sight, mapping, and corridor mapping based off the needs of the client or the use case you're diving into. For Helene in particular, we mapped along the rivers in the mountains, which is very hard to reach areas. We mostly use quadcopters, which are the smaller, either Mavic series from DJI or the larger M300 series, using a mechanical shutter to do photogrammetry missions. That was in support of the Appalachian Rebuild Project, which is a project we helped establish up there in the mountains to raise money and rebuild some of the houses and other churches and other infrastructure that was damaged during the storm. Doing those mapping missions was very interesting and difficult because we had to use another layer of technology called a RTK, or real-time kinetic base station, that attached to the drone itself, so that the drones could fly nap of the earth versus just flying at a flat altitude. This enables the drone to be able to see where it is on Earth. So if it's flying at 300 feet, it will follow the elevation as it maps instead of flying straight into the side of a mountain. So
never good.
No. I mean, we do train veterans, and not all of us eat the purple crayons, so they do get crashed from time to time.
I bet they do. As we're coming to the end of the time here, I want to thank Chris Lewis of veteranstodrones.org of taking some time, and it's really interesting to see how this military application is moving over to the civilian world, and that veterans have a role to play. Now, I know you got all kinds of inquiries because VA put the spotlight on you. Are you still interested in having vets reach out to you, and how do they do that?
Oh, absolutely. If you go onto the Vets to Drones website, you can find out how to reach out. There's a sign-up form right there. It'll get you onto one of our onboarding calls. We can start getting you into the mix. So we'll be providing that Part 107 training for free, so you can get licensed. And then there's a slew of expertise from the fellow veterans across the industry and instructors that we hire as well to provide instruction.
Well, we appreciate the time you've given us today, Chris, and an interesting look into this growing industry of civilian drone operators, and really sounds like a great opportunity to veterans. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate you.
Military veterans touch everyone's life. I'm guessing right now you're thinking of a veteran, a close friend, relative. Maybe it's you. Even the toughest of us sometimes need help, but don't know where to turn for support. You don't need special training to help a veteran in your life. Even small actions can make a world of difference. If you know a veteran in crisis, please call the Veterans Crisis Line, 800-273-8255. 800-273-8255. A message from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs.
If you have a VA claim denied by the Board of Veterans' Appeals, contact Legal Help for Veterans at 1-800-693-4800. They're experts in handling cases before the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. Their number again, 1-800-693-4800.
We want to welcome to Veterans Radio today Rick Berman, who is the Executive Director of the RAM Veterans Foundation and the Mercer Family Foundation, and they have something called Charities.org that Rick's going to tell us about that I think is really important for people to know about. Rick, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Thanks so much, Jim.
So this started, this Charities for Vets, I think, started in 2022.
Sure.
Tell us, as a veterans advocate, kind of how you got into this and what problem you saw needed to be solved.
Well, I've had a long history of advocacy on behalf of private interests, uh, ranging from issues in the environmental area, the labor area, um, financial area. And basically, what I was doing on behalf of clients is correcting the record in terms of public opinion. There's a lot of groups out there that have an agenda and they say things that are untrue or they take facts and they twist them. And so for very many years, my job was to, as I say, correct the record and then to put out information for the public where they would say, oh, I never thought of it that way before. I would give people information that made them think twice. And I retired from my business 2.5 years ago. And about the time I was retiring from my business, I was familiar with these groups, these active groups that that are always putting out information, and they're collecting a lot of money. They're scaring people with all sorts of doom and gloom, and contribute to our organization, and we'll stop all that from happening. And so one day I was just watching television and I saw a commercial for veterans, or I should say for donors, a commercial for donors to contribute, and they were going to help veterans. And I thought to myself, I've seen so many of these groups that overpromise and underdeliver. I've just wondered if that was going on in the veteran space. And so I just did some investigation, as I had done many times before. You look up tax returns, et cetera. And I did it for the big organizations. And I thought, my God, there's a lot of people here who are contributing to organizations and they have no idea what people are doing with their money. And Rebecca Mercer is a friend of mine, and she's a great philanthropist. And I went to see Rebecca and I said, you ever heard of this problem? And she said, no. And I said, you got any interest? And she said, well, as a matter of fact, I have a great uncle who was killed in France fighting the Nazis. And I've always had a warm spot in my heart for veterans. And she said, if we can do something about that, let's do it. So between Rebecca and I, we put up $1 million to start this organization. And that meant we had to do the research. We had to put out information that would create an awareness among people. We got 60 billboards when we started out. We put them up in Times Square and around the country, and created some videos. And of course, using the power of the internet gave us an appeal to a lot of people. And at the end of the day, we started to raise more money. And our goal was, number one, to stay focused on veterans. We were not going to have an organization that rated charities from children's health to environment issues, et cetera. We're just going to stay on veterans. And I was only going to do large veteran charities. I mean, there's a lot of them out there, as you know, you go from Wounded Warriors to Tunnel to Towers and some of these other high profile groups. And I said, let's just do 100 of these things. We'll do the 100 biggest ones we can find. And we'll put them into categories. We're going to be very straightforward about it. We'll say, we're going to recommend some. Then there'll be some that are highly recommended because they're really good. And then we're going to say, hey, there's a bunch of charities out there that I wouldn't give my money to, and neither should you.
And I think that's the thing that hooked me in finding out about charitiesforvets.org is like, yeah, and you hear about it every year, every state. There are scams targeted not only to veterans, but to supporters of veterans. And you go like, why are you wasting your money on that scam? Your heart's in the right spot, but your pocketbook isn't. And so that's really what you were drilling in on, wasn't it?
Yeah, and of course I wanted people to stop giving to those groups, but on the other hand, I didn't want them to just sit on their checkbook. So that's why I said, I don't want you to stop giving. I just want you to redirect your giving. And that's why we have the charities. About half of the charities that we rate are in our recommended or highly recommended category. 60%, I would say, are positive. But 40% of the 100 are in the not recommended category. And And that doesn't mean that a charity that's not recommended on our list doesn't do any good work, but they typically don't do it as efficiently as they should. Scams are one thing, and there, as you say, there's plenty of it. It's hard to see a scam though, especially if it's a smaller one, because reporting is not that great. The Federal Trade Commission doesn't do a good job. The Internal Revenue Service does a terrible job. So at the end of the day, what we end up doing is we say to people, look, this charity here, maybe it has 90% overhead. Well, so 10% of their money is going to good things. And if you ask them, well, what have you done? They'll give you the 10%, here's what we did. And it sounds good until you find out that they're wasting a whole lot of money on their way to that victory, if you will.
Yeah, you've got two issues here going in trying to rate folks, right? There's sort of are they efficient? Are their administrative costs low? And are they effective?
Yes.
Which do you look at, or do you look at them both?
Well, that's a great question. You're very prophetic about our work. Here's what we started out with. Efficiency is a lot easier because you're really looking at math. I look at state fundraising reports. I look at their IRS, of course, is where most of the information comes from. And I can tell you, because 2 and 2 is 4 all day long. And so you just look at it, you can add stuff up. And people come back to me and they say, how can you do that? How can you rate us that way? And I say, it's just math. And I'm not picking winners and losers. I'm just calling balls and strikes, if you will. And you're either over the plate or you're not. So that's the efficiency that you mentioned. Effectiveness, Jim, is very, very difficult because there's no way to have a simple template like you can have for efficiency. You can't just look at someone's IRS form and see if they're effective. So in the latter part of this year, for the first time, I'm going to put my toe in the water on effectiveness. And we are going to start coming up. I have some ideas. I don't want to announce them as such because we may change them along the way. But we are going to get into the effectiveness business. And
I think that's excellent. The efficiency math, if you will, and you're a guy familiar and comfortable with numbers, is sort of black and white. And as you say, they can call you up and complain about the rating, but you say, look at your numbers, it's math. And you're getting that from what I'll call open sources, right?
Right.
This is their IRS Form 990, and this is their tax returns, and maybe things on their own website that they publish, maybe things that they report to the state attorney generals. So that's all open source. They can't be very critical to the organization about that, I suspect. Or once they are critical, they quickly back away. Is that what you've been experiencing?
Yeah, and of course, you can still game the system if you're looking to do that, if you're the charity, but we look a little tighter at it. For instance, there's something called joint cost accounting, where people are able to hide their overhead by saying that what they're doing is educating people. And without getting into the weeds on it, we don't allow people to spend very much money on what we'll call joint cost accounting, where they're hiding their overhead. There's always a little bit of it that goes on, but if you're over the line as far as we're concerned, and we do draw some lines as to how much is too much, then we'll downgrade organizations. So yes, it's just math.
I went through the website, and I do see that you draw some lines about how much should or shouldn't be spent on administrative overhead like that sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit about the lines that you draw?
Yeah. Well, for instance, if you on fundraising, if the fundraiser is making more money than the charity is off of a particular campaign, we say they're not recommended. If you've got more than 25% of your budget devoted to overhead, more than 25%, we say you're not recommending. And mind you, there are charities out there where their overhead is under 10%. And so when I see a charity that's got 50% overhead or 60% overhead, I say, there's no reason that this thing can't be managed properly. And again, it's not necessarily a scam, but there is a lot of people who are running these organizations who shouldn't be running a convenience store. They're just not that good at running a business. And we know that's true about all sorts of institutions where people are managing more money than they have any knowledge of managing. So the fundraising, the 25% overhead, maybe you have too much money in the bank. People are giving you money and you're keeping it in reserve for some rainy day. That's what I heard somebody tell me once in the early stages of this. He had 5 times his budget in reserves. And I said, why do you have so much money there? People are giving you the money to spend on veterans and you're putting it in the bank, so to speak. And he says, it's a rainy day. It's a rainy day fund, he said. And I said, well, for some of these disabled veterans, it's raining every day. So how about spending the money? And so if you've got more than 3 years worth of your budget in reserve, we will downgrade people for that. And that may be, I just hinted at something that may be the most important fact. If you look at other rating agencies, there are some other rating agencies out there that rate charities of every kind. Now, of course, we're just doing veterans, and we're only doing 100 veteran charities. But what they do is that they grade these organizations, whatever kind of organization they're grading. There's an averaging component to their algorithm. So if you're good in one area and you're bad in another area, they average it out by some formula that they have. And so now you get a middling grade. You got an A here and an F here, so you get a C.
Now you're sounding like my high school geometry teacher here.
Yeah, exactly. So, and everybody's familiar with that. You do well one area, you do poor another. Well, with us, we decided that wasn't the way to go. If we had these main factors, and if somebody's got excessive overhead, but they're good in all these other areas, we're not going to average it. We're going to say, if you got excessive overhead, you fail. And so we have a pass-fail system for every one of the factors that we use in our judging. And if you fail in any one of those factors, you hit the not recommended category.
So we're talking to Rick Berman, who's the executive director for RAM Veterans Foundation, which is spearheading with the Mercer Family Foundation a interesting website called charitiesforvets.org that ranks the top 100 veteran-focused charities in the country. And one of the things that I also liked, not only is that you draw lines, but you're willing to say, name names, if you will. Hey, here's the recommended, here's the not recommended. You actually have a screen that says examples of waste and abuse. And when I'm looking at these, one of the things that sort of comes to my mind is there's a lot of similarity in names or confusing names where I think I'm doing a national organization, maybe, one of the VSOs, Veteran Service Organizations. But I'm thinking, I bet there's somebody else. Have you bumped into that some of this is name confusion as to which charity I'm giving to?
Absolutely. And a lot of the people who give to charities are older people, and it's easy for them to get screwed up by thinking that they're given to one and they're actually given to another. The brand confusion is rampant. And actually, you can see some of that on our website. But, I once looked up, this is a year or two ago, I once looked up how many organizations had wounded warriors in their name. And there were 57 organizations that had wounded warriors in their name. Could be Wounded Warriors of Detroit, or
right.
A lot of variations. So sure, you're right on that one, Jim.
No, that's I was searching for the right word, but you used it. It's brand confusion. It's is the Disabled Veterans National Foundation, which is on your list of examples of waste and abuse. Is that DAV? Yeah, I read it again. I said, well, that's not DAV. It's easy for even those paying attention to get confused. The Purple Heart Veterans Foundation. I don't think that's the Purple Heart Legion. I think that's something else, So you've done 100 of these, And there are probably thousands because your criteria was what, 2 million in or something in annual giving or receiving?
It's now 3 million, 3 million or more.
Okay.
There's so many small ones, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. How? What advice do you give folks who go, well, I don't see this on your list, but that doesn't mean anything other than it's not big enough to get rated?
That's right. And I might have even missed some big ones. Every so often we'll find one that we didn't know existed. But that's the problem. Someone told me once they had done the research and that there were 45,000 veterans organizations or organizations with veterans in their name.
That doesn't surprise me. That number's shocking number, but I go, yeah, probably.
Yeah, and a lot of them are these mom and pop operations people with a good heart. I'm not saying everybody does this, for criminal reasons. People with a good heart, they start one of these. In fact, I get a lot of people from these small ones who ask if we would please rate them because we're doing a lot of advertising and they'd like to be on our website. And I tell them, look, I don't have the bandwidth to go after all these groups. I want to just go after the ones that are big enough to be making a difference.
Well, and I see some of these that you've rated, combined, and it's probably a marketer's dream, right? Let's combine veterans and dogs. Everybody likes that, and you've got a few of those. Like, hey, the lines we draw. That some of these aren't good because they've got spend too much here or there. Notwithstanding, they're plucking two of your heartstrings, dogs and veterans.
You got it. Yeah, there are several service dogs organizations for veterans. Yep.
As you went through and you do this and continue to refine it, what has surprised you?
Well, in a positive way, one of the things that surprised me is that some people have called me up after they discovered that we're rating them and we're rating them poorly. They've said, okay, we understand why you rated us poorly. And we think that we could probably change the way we do business, and we'd like to get into a different category of recommended. And I say, one of the things that we have, it's a signature of our group, is that I will take any appeal, any reasonable appeal, and if you make that case, we will in fact change the ratings. And so I've actually done that 2 or 3 times. So that was a good thing. It surprised me that people were willing as opposed to just getting nasty about it. The flip side of that is that there have been some very nasty people who have been angry over the fact that we rated them the way that we did. And I said, look, that goes back to what we talked about earlier. I said, look, it's just math. And, they'll say, well, you're looking at it incorrectly. There are some people who say overhead should not be a factor. I say, well, you can make that case if you want to, but if you're wasting money, that's the first place I'm going to see it is overhead. And if you want to make the case, someone will say, well, we have to pay excessive salaries to get good people. I say, that's not the case. I mean, I'm doing this for free. I don't take a salary. There are people who will do that. And then there are people who are getting $500,000 a year. Well, if you're getting, 6-figure salaries, you're going to have high overhead unless you've got really high revenues. And if you think the only way you can run this is with very expensive staff, well, that's your choice, but I'm going to report it as such.
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly all of those small charities in that 45,000 number or so, there's plenty of them that are 100% volunteer that they don't collect more than 40, 50, 100, 200 grand a year, but it all goes right back out the door. So when you just because you got big doesn't mean you get to be live lavishly.
Right. I mean, fancy office buildings. I mean, there's a lot of ways to spend money.
So, Rick, as you go forward here and you're kind of going to dip your toe into effectiveness, that'll be an interesting challenge. And when you get that up and running, we'd love to talk to you about that, sort of how you set the bar, how you make some of these determinations. But as we wrap up here, what advice would you give not only veterans, but friends of veterans who are donating to these causes? What advice would you give them before they write that check?
Well, of course, not everybody has the capacity to do their own research. So I would like them to say, at least if they're thinking of a charity that we are already grading, to just go to our website. That's another distinguishing feature, is that our ratings are for free. There's no fee, there's no subscription. You just get on the internet and there it is. And we're updating it on a very regular basis. So I would say, go to our website and see if it's there. Now, some people have called me up or emailed me and say, could you please rate this charity for me? And it's not on our list. And I typically say, look, here's how you rate it. And sometimes if I've got nothing better to do with my time, which is not too often, I will look at a charity and just do a superficial rating. And I'll just go back and say, well, they look like they're pretty decent people, or otherwise. So there's not much I can tell people. I'm not going to tell people to go and do their own research on with tax returns, because if you can read a tax return, you don't need my advice to tell you to go find it.
No, it for most people, that we don't have the time, we don't have the expertise, the patience to do all the homework. That's why charitiesforvets.org is so important. I want to thank Rick Berman for his time today and for the good work that RAM Veterans Foundation and Mercer Family Foundation are funding through this effort. Rick, I really appreciate you explaining this to us today.
Jim, it's been my pleasure.
So I should tell you, I think after that interview, that veteransradio.org is a 501c3 nonprofit. We don't have any big paid hosts like myself or Dale, and the team is primarily all veterans and all volunteers. So if you want to support our efforts here at Veterans Radio, you can feel comforted that the money's really going to the mission, and the mission is to be the voice of American veterans, tell important stories, get forward interesting ideas, those sorts of things that you've been listening to here on Veterans Radio. We have some great local sponsors who also meet the test of being good charitable organizations, like the Vietnam Veterans of America Charles S. Kettles Chapter 310 in Ann Arbor, VFW Graf O'Hare Post 423, the American Legion Irwin Preskin Post 46, along with those like the National Veterans, Vietnam Veterans of America, NVBDC. Those are organizations, again, charities that you can count on, charities you can rely on, and we'd encourage you to look at them. But we also have had a lot of good sponsors who are not in the charity category. Unfortunately, they spend some of their hard-earned profits supporting things like Veterans Radio. Some of those would be Kearns Brothers, Nader Builders, J&B Painting and Coating Specialists, Arbor Avenue Private Wealth, Trillamed, Aero Strategies, Cornerstone, Real Estate. These are all folks who supported our Radio on the River event, which was really successful and will keep us going here for a while. And in that group of supporters included folks who are nonprofits you should look at, like Fisher House of Michigan, Bob Woodruff Foundation. Those kind of people, again, realize the good work we're doing and the work that's necessary to do to keep the things going, keep veteran stories moving forward, give you information on veteran benefits, for example, bring you maybe a unbiased, unpolitical view of what's going on at VA, and that's kind of why we're supported by the Ann Arbor healthcare system, VA healthcare system. We wouldn't get that support if we were not giving it to you straight down the middle, and that's really what Dale and I and the team tries to do, is bring you information you can use, but also filter it in a way that it's useful, that it's not biased, but instead creates an opportunity for you to look into something. I'm thinking of programs that we did, for example, on VA acupuncture that folks didn't know VA offered, and actually one of our board members used it recently and told us that, hey, my pain reduced by 50%. That's astounding. So again, we're veterans who use services, we're veterans who need this information on benefits, trying to understand, what can be a complex system. And certainly under this current administration, it's been confusing at times of what's really going on. We don't rant. We don't give you the politics. We try to give you the facts and the information that you need as a veteran or a friend of a veteran in understanding what services are available, what information might be out there, what business opportunities might be out there. Hey, is this, vets to drones, is that an industry maybe I should get into? We've talked to the folks who run veteran driving schools. We talked to veteran franchisees like PuraClean about why veterans make good business owners and good franchisees. So there's a whole bunch of really solid reasons to listen in every week to Veterans Radio, whether it's on your local station or on the internet where it's maybe sometimes more convenient for you to get to. But it's important for us you to know that we're one of those veteran charities that really takes our mission seriously, and we're good stewards of the funds that are provided to us to keep this whole process going. So appreciate you listening in to Veterans Radio today. I hope you enjoyed both of these stories on Vets to Drones and rating veteran charities. And until come on back next week, and until next time on Veterans Radio, you are dismissed.